change I've made is taking out vegetable oils and seed oils and being really mindful about the processed foods that I eat, reading my labels, and not doubling up on processed foods and meals.
Beautiful. Now, I do have a question for Robert.
No, but you hear what she said.
Yeah,
incredible. So then I finish your point, Amy, because Amy was sharing how all her health markers are better.
I eat a lot of butter. I eat bacon fat. I cook with it. I cook with also olive oil and avocado oil. But yet we're taught those are all bad. The bacon fat, the butter. And you're to eat the vegetable oils and the seed oils, how much better they are. But my labs just proved the opposite.
Yeah, beautiful. Congratulations.
And you're right. I mean, if you look at everyone from the Mayo Clinic, the American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, you look at Harvard, you go on their websites right now and they advocate seed oils. They tell you that polyunsaturated fats will lower your LDLs. And there's been some studies on that, which in the studies, it does demonstrate that. But again, it's a partial view of things. But they're encouraging people to eat all of that. And then they tell people like Amy, don't eat butter, don't eat lard, don't eat suet, don't have beef tallow, stay away from all of that. And she's eating with that. And now all her numbers are better.
Beautiful. Incredible.
I still eat my sausages. I still eat my fatty steaks.
Beautiful. My question for you and Robert was, triglycerides always confuse me. So her triglycerides are a lot better.
Way better. She's a normal range.
And
now.
Why were they high before? Is it carbs when you reduce carbs? I mean, what's the correct?
It's a combination of quite a few things.
That's a great question. I would like to know this because
it always confuses me for 30 years.
I have been careful about my carbs.
Well, triglycerides is a combination of fat and carbs, and they're floating, so they bundle together. And when you have that increase, that's associated with all these negatives, heart disease.
Should we go live with her call?
We're live right now.
Oh, I didn't know I'm jumping around. Okay.
Yeah. So eating the way you're eating, all those things improve. It's kind of like I had a client who he's 73 years old and his triglycerides are always about 400.
Oh, wow.
And when I first met him, he walked in and he was like, I'm really interested. His name is Rick.
Was this here?
No, it was great.
That was very good? Okay.
It was great.
Always questioning things.
No, I'm just saying. So his triglycerides were always over 400 and he's 73 years old. A year after doing diet-free life, his triglycerides are normal. So he had came to a place at 73 where he had accepted that this must be genetic. But Rick, be my witness. If you catch this, Rick, live, you can comment and share with people. But he walks in one day, he and his wife, Penny, he says, hey, I got some good news. I go, what's that? And remember, he's following diet-free life. He's eating a lot of things that a lot of people say you shouldn't eat. You know what I mean? There's no extreme, there's balance. And now he has normal triglycerides for the first time in over 30 years. When you experience that, Melissa and Amy, Amy, you totally get it. Melissa's new to diet-free life, by the way. And she's in training to be a coach, and we're working together, which is great. And it's good that I'm talking to you and that you're willing to share, because we can fast track your real appreciation of diet-free life, which I know you appreciate it. But when you start meeting enough people, like what Amy is saying, like Rick, after a while, it's like, it's kind of hard to believe all the people talking crazy. They come across like they're talking crazy, but they're not crazy. They just don't know about the diet-free life. That's the difference.
And Amy, you know, I'd be really curious. About a half hour ago, Robert and I were talking about his friend who passed at 114. Do we know his blood markers?
114 years old.
114 years old.
No, wow. I wish I knew his blood markers.
Yeah, that'd be really cool to know.
But what's cool, some of my clients who live in Phoenix, we did a couple of events there, and they got to meet him, which was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, based on what I've been reading in the last few years, the people who live the longest have the highest cholesterol, whether it's HDL, LDL, I don't know. But for Robert to have a friend who's 114, wouldn't it be great to say, hey, and his LDL was here and his triglycerides were there, and it would have been cool to know.
Now, I have a question on the triglycerides. You said that it's carbs and fat.
Well, I said those play the major role on.
Those play the major role.
Yes.
Okay, I have been watching my fast carbs. And trying to really be careful with those. But would that be why this lowered? Because I eat so much fat. I really do.
No,
Dairy,
I would
animal meat.
And when I say fat, I'm also involving seed oils, vegetable oils in that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been trying to. Like I said, they're not in my house at all. It's just from processed foods, and I'm really careful about not doubling up or how much we eat that.
Yeah, if a person is eating less of that, you're going to see many of your health markers improve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does salt make a play in that?
As far as avoiding it or adding it?
Well, I'm not going to totally avoid salt. That's just not going to happen. And I will be upfront about that. But I have been careful with how much salt I'm adding.
Okay. Well, I think it's mindful to be aware of your salt intake. But here's the deal. There's no studies that are conclusive that say that eating salt creates damage. I was talking to Melissa earlier, and we were talking about one study they did it's called the DASH diet, where you avoid all processed foods and you don't add any salt to your food. And that's the only study, if you will, they've done where they could demonstrate that by reducing your salt intake, your blood pressure gets better. But the part they don't explain or add is not only were those people eating less salt, they were eating less seed oils and processed food. So then we could argue, was it the lack of salt that improved your blood pressure, or was it the fact that you avoided seed and vegetable oils that improved your blood pressure? I believe it's the latter, not salt. I believe that salt is our friend. I believe it's a natural thing that we gravitate to. I believe people have cravings because they are not eating enough salt. And there's so much data when it comes to salt. Like we know that if you aren't eating enough salt, like in one study, they had two groups of people that were type 2 diabetics. And one group they had avoid salt, and the other group they had eat as much salt as you want. In both groups, the blood pressure didn't change.
Interesting.
And this is where it gets even more interesting. The group that avoided salt, they became more insulin resistant.
Sounds like Amy got it right.
So to me, and I have clients right now that have been concerned with their blood pressure, and one of the first things I had them do was stop avoiding salt, and then we see their blood pressure levels go down. Boom!
Bada bing!
That's right. What do you think of that? What do you think of that, Amy?
I like it.
Okay.
That makes Amy happy because you said you love salt and you're not going to reduce it. And wow, I mean, like they say the phrase.
Well, I know if I eat too much of it, I know I swell up, but I've been trying to find a balance.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where you we have to become our own advocate, right, when it comes to our health. And it also helps that we are mindful of what's going on with our own bodies. So I know, like, for instance, if I eat certain foods, like when I eat white rice, which I love, I feel like I didn't eat anything an hour later.
Yeah.
It's like it just goes right through me.
I feel like that with protein and vegetables. If I have just protein and vegetables, oh my gosh, I'm starving 2 hours later.
So you need something more, right? And so you start listening to yourself, right? It could be that you're missing fat, because fat is very satiating. Could mean that maybe you would benefit from eating a little bit more protein. And if it's not protein, maybe it's dietary fiber. Or you just are a little light when it comes to a caloric range, and it would help to add a little bit of bulk to it, with some whole grains or rice. And then you're good. And then you find that balance. And that's a big part of, like, when we call our meals fat-burning meals, all those meals were designed for people to be able to eat plenty or enough food where they're not hungry, and to eat in a way where the blood sugar levels don't fluctuate too high. And then to put a person in a position where they don't feel like they're deprived or restricted or missing. Right? Because everybody can do good for a period of time.
Yeah.
And this is a biblical principle. So, and in the book where they talk about Jesus, and my Jewish friends and family members may not know this, but there's a story about Adam and Eve. And when they were told no, right, which was only one thing in the beginning, stay away from that fruit. You tell someone no, what do you think they think about all day?
They salivate.
Exactly. It's like psychologically, we know that if I take away things from you, then that's exactly what you're going to want. So knowing that psychologically, why would I ever create a program that restricts you? Instead, let me give you options, right? So if I want to have a fat burning meal that's a burger and I really want the fries, well, just don't eat the bread. So you go with a lettuce wrap and then you can have the fries. But if you prefer because there's people who can't eat a burger with lettuce, they want bread. Yeah. Don't eat the fries. And then guess what? If you really want the fries, well, eat them later as a snack.
Or make them at home without the canola oil.
Yeah, or whatever oils. But I'm just saying, it's a matter of having options. And to me, when you have the freedom of choice, which means options, that is extremely powerful. You take away choice and people feel restricted, you feel imprisoned. And that's what they call dieting, Amy.
But when Amy was talking about salt and you were talking about biblical, it reminded me of the phrase, when it's a good person, we say they're the salt of the earth. And I just love what Robert's talking about because it's about balance. So Amy thought she was feeling guilty. She said, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm going to continue to go with my salt. Little did she know what Robert was going to say. Eat your salt.
Yeah, well, Amy knows me long enough that I'm not the kind of person that says you can't have.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person that says, okay, well, how can we make that work?
Yeah.
It's just a different spin on how I personally think. I'm an optimist.
And now that you're working with Robert, Amy, what's been the major thing that's changed you? I know for me, it was I usually am always having bread. If I'm at a restaurant, I have to have the bread. And now because I'm on his program, I don't have the bread. It became easy when I really struggled before.
It's taken me a long time to get there. We've worked together for over a year now.
Yes.
I'm a little slow when it comes to this. I'm a foodie. I like my food.
And luckily, Robert doesn't say don't have the bread. That was my goal, though. I felt I couldn't control myself. I wanted to have control. I didn't have control. Now at least I have control.
But for me, it's changing my mindset and being mindful. What is it I really, really stinking want? For dinner. What am I craving? And then building around that piece.
And what about exercise? Did your exercise change in any way?
I have another coach for exercise, who I absolutely adore. But right now, I've been on hold for exercise for over a year now because I was in a car accident. So I'm in physical therapy.
Okay. But I like what you said.
I've been doing just kind of leg lifts and stuff to get my hips healed and my back healed.
Okay. But
and walking. I'm to walk 10 minutes a day.
That's good.
But one of the things that you said is very powerful, Amy, is that you had another coach. And so I'm up and this is what Dr. Sabine and I were talking about the other day, was you need a team. You need to surround yourself with a bunch of people or a few people that you call your team that's going to help you get to where you want to be. Right? And
yes.
And when it comes to coaching, people who do the best in business have a coach. People who are Michael Jackson as a vocal artist, he had a voice coach. Celine Dion has a voice coach. Michael Jackson also had a dance coach, and this is one of the best dancing people in the world. There's power in having a coach because it brings in this thing called accountability, that if we could put it in a bottle, we would sell it. Accountability is powerful. And so no matter where you and I are, Amy, at this point in our time together, you are in a much better place than if you didn't have that coach in your corner.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I have data now of people that I coached and then I didn't coach for 4, 5, 6 months. And then I connected with them again. None of them are leaner. None of them are healthier. So you remove accountability and it gets tough. But we live in a world where everybody is so wanting to be in control and so like I am the master of my ship that we lack humility. And if you look at warriors in our past, like the greatest warriors from Shaka Zulu, you name it, they all were humble. If you look at, Book of Five Rings, Miyamoto Musashi, or if you look at Sansu, The Art of War, they were all humble and they encouraged people, be humble. Find resources that you can lean on. Find coaches. Keep yourself accountable so that you can maximize. And that means you got to look at the weaknesses that you have. You got to look at the strengths that you have. And then you have another set of eyes and ears that are kind of helping you stay true to what's real. And you're a great client, Amy, because you're always fun to talk to and you always go after it and give your best effort. And so to hear that your lab work is where it is right now, you bring a smile on my face. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations.
I was also gonna say it's really hard.
So great.
Hard because to kind of bounce off what you were saying, Robert, about where our world is at today, is I struggle with wanting that instant gratification. Over the years, I've been sucked into, take this tea, whatever program or, whatever these supplements are selling you for weight loss. And I really struggle with that instant gratification, and I haven't seen it in the weight loss or the inches, but to see it in my health, in my lab work, in my changing my thinking and how I cook at home, and changing all that up. I know I'll get there, but seeing the results that aren't physical has made such an impact. Did I just make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but they are physical. But you're right. And what I get from that, and when I tell people, because so many people monitor their success by if their weight is going in the right direction. Where I'm looking at, like when I get on the phone with a client, one of the first things I always say, and Amy can maybe support this, I go, how was your week?
Oh, yeah.
And then but you know what's interesting is in their mind goes right to their weight.
Yep.
But the question was, how was your week? I want to know, what was your week? Was it good? Were you happy? Maybe you got a pay raise? Maybe you didn't. Maybe you woke up early. Maybe you walked. It's not just about what the weight is. It's about how was your week? Because if your weight is down, but yet your marriage is worse, then that wasn't a good week. Right? But they're saying, oh, it was a great week because their weight was down. I'm like, okay, well, how was your real week? Like, what was your real week like? Did things go well? Did your kid get F's, A's? Like, let's talk about all that. And then we can drill down and we can start looking at the key markers. And then we don't just get happy because the weight is down. We want to look at, was your fasting glucose good? Which yours was like amazingly good this morning, Amy.
Oh, what was it?
I know. I have no idea with eating all those fast carbs last night. I have no idea. But yeah, I haven't seen it like that. And I think since I started working with you, it's never been that low.
What was your fasting glucose, Amy, if you don't mind sharing?
It was 100 this morning.
Wow, that's really good.
Yes.
And I started out like somewhere between 130 and 140 when I started working with Robert.
Do you call that diabetes or pre-diabetes? That sounds like in the diabetic realm. Huh?
And where she was, that would be in the diabetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in the cutoff 125, 126, maybe then you're
126 and higher, you're 2 times in a row you're considered. It's a good likelihood that you have type 2 diabetes.
Wow, you're saying.
Now, see, my doctor looks at just the glucose, and that was at 85 this last time.
Okay,
but she has not taken my A1C.
Okay, so that's what and she has no need to take your A1C when you have 85 as your fasting glucose, which when you do it at the lab and they pull your blood.
And that's in the afternoon because my appointments are all in the afternoon.
So let's clarify that if you don't mind, AB and Robert, because I didn't know. So when I'm poking myself, I've never done this before. Because of Robert, I do my fasting glucose and during the day to see how the foods are affecting me. So I was 100 today. So you're saying at a lab it would have been different?
It would have been lower.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So most glucose monitors that people use are going to register higher. So even though we use them, they don't want to be sued, right? Because if it's lower, then you could believe that you don't have diabetes and walk around thinking you got it going on. And then,
or you can take too much medication.
Yeah, and then find out that maybe you're not when you go get your lab work. Well, then that Novo Nordisk, who gave you that glucose monitor, they now gave you false belief that you were okay.
And then what's the continuous glucose monitor? Is it in your hip or something? And
it could be your hip, back of your arm. It's just a way of monitoring your glucose nonstop.
So you don't have to keep poking yourself.
Right. You don't have to poke it. You can kind of see it throughout the day, which opens up people's eyes because they can see immediately by eating that bagel and maybe some cookies afterward, their glucose just goes boom, way up, right? And you can see that. And that makes you, oh, I'm not going to do that again. So there's a lot of benefits from having a continued glucose monitor.
And can we buy that ourselves? Or do we
You can, they're expensive. But if you just follow the program, then you're good. So I've had many clients that'll go pay $250 a month just to have one.
A month?
And sometimes your insurance will cover it. But if you're going to pay out of pocket, you're going to pay over $200. And they do it because, one, they can afford it, and two, they want to actually see. And every time they do it, everything that I've been telling them without proof comes to fruition. So then, because, some of us, I get it, some of us need to see it. So there you go.
Plus, it's fascinating. It's interesting to see it because we're learning. I mean, really, Amy, if it wasn't for Robert, I would never do the glucose monitor, but I got it. And I just fascinating. I didn't know anything about what was going on in my blood.
Yep, I believe.
Yeah, my dad's type 2 diabetic. So, which is non-reversible for him, unfortunately.
That's because he chooses not to reverse
it. No, actually, so he had 4 or 5 different bouts of cancer about 25 years ago. And the cancer killed his pancreas. He has his pancreas. He didn't have pancreatic cancer, but the cancer messed with his pancreas. It's not reversible.
Okay. Well, we have to talk about that later because I have some additional thoughts on that.
Okay. Would love it.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm going to say bye, Amy. So thank you for the good news.
Good to meet you, Amy.
Nice to meet you too.
All right. Thank you for the good news, Amy. It's always good to hear your voice. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
It's nice
all right.
to hear those good stories.
So we are going to say goodbye, right? So behind the scenes, you guys. Now, this is Melissa, and Melissa is a new coach. She's in training, and so she's getting ready to put it out there and start helping a lot of people. But any other questions that you have for me while we're behind the scenes live?
We went through so much. I feel like there's nothing left. I'd have to look at my notes, but.
Oh, there's a whole bunch that's going to come up.
Yeah.
But that's good. I mean, I appreciate you being here to help make this possible.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I could look at my notes because I have, interviews going on, and so should I ask them?
I mean, if you want. I mean, we have 8 minutes left. Do you guys have any questions? Let me see. I'll look and see if there's anyone catching this live. Let's see here. There's Stu. What's up, my man, Stu?
I have a question.
Stu, look what he says. Stu's a producer who I met in Hollywood on a TV show.
Okay.
He's no longer in Hollywood. He's living a really good life because I would get out of Hollywood too, Stu.
Where's Stu now?
I believe he's in Alabama.
Okay.
He's a good guy. He's a good friend. Our kids are about the same age. Stu and his wife, they're good people. And yeah, love you, Stu, man. We should talk and catch up. I love to catch up with you. But Stu posted here, he says, still keeping the weight off, Ferg. That makes me so happy because that's, Stu knows, I mean, that's why I do what I do. But if someone has a question and they're catching this live, then go for it. But Melissa may have a question.
Okay.
Let's go, Melissa.
See if we don't have any questions. So my question has been, listening to all these doctors who transform their life and listening to people like you, there's a certain age, of course, the number's not going to be exact, but it seems like when you're a kid, you just eat what you want. You could be fat, you could be thin, you could be athletic, and you're fine. All of a sudden, you get to this certain age or this certain age range. Do you notice clients say, I was doing fine, and all of a sudden, I turned this age, and I just can't seem to eat what I want, do what I want, and then they come to you because whatever age that was. Did you notice there's a certain age where you just like, okay, I'm not a kid anymore, and I have to do something?
Well, I mean, I believe it's a compound effect of what our life was like, right? So when you're a kid, I'll answer this question by sharing a real story with you that many people can relate to. So when my sister and I were babies and kids growing up, we both were thin and lean, right? And people were much leaner in the 70s than they are today, like kids, right? And as my sister matured in life, she put on some weight. She got pregnant as a teenager and was never lean again. And when we talked to my mom, I saw pictures of her when we were born and she got married, and I saw pictures of her with my dad. And my mom battled with her weight after she had her first kids at 18 and 21 and did everything from black beauties, I mean, you name it, to keep the weight off, dieting. And so I grew up watching a mom diet. And that's a big part of why I got into the space, to help other moms, to include my own. So my mom was heavier. My sister now is heavier. And then my sister has a daughter. And when my niece was little, she was really skinny, really thin. We called her skinny. And her dad, my sister's boyfriend, who she had the baby with, he was always really skinny, or what we call skinny, thin. And I remember everybody talking back then saying that my niece has taken the metabolism of her dad. So she's lucky. And in my mind, somewhere I'm thinking, well, my sister was lean like her too when she was little. Well, then my niece grows up, and of course she battles with her weight today. Then her daughter is born, my great niece. Well, her dad, the dad of her, is really thin, just like my niece's dad. And when my great niece was little, everybody was like, oh, she got her dad's metabolism. So you see this same thing going again and again and again. But as people mature in life, all of a sudden they have this battle with their weight. So let's just say that seed oils are really negative like we believe they are. And let's just say that as we mature in life, all of the seed oils that we've been eating, right? Because when you're 8 years old or you're 13, and you can kind of eat what you want and not gain weight, you don't think you're causing damage? You're causing damage. And it shows up later, right? Because you have a natural sense of growth, hormone factors, insulin, all these things are naturally happening through puberty and just because we're growing. And we grow like this, straight up. We don't grow wide. But once you hit that mark where you're not going to get any taller, then if you can't get taller, you get wider. And as Dr. Sabine has discovered in her with bifidobacteria, right? When you're young, you have an abundance of it. And one of the markers is aging. So as you mature in life, you have less bifidobacteria than you did when you were younger. So then you become more prone to various diseases. Your immune system is not the same. And that's just the cycle of life. So yes, weight loss gets harder as we mature in life. Your metabolism does not slow, and we know that through science and studies.
Okay, good to hear.
It becomes either more efficient or less efficient, but it doesn't slow. So the notion, again, if we took 100 adults and lined them up and said, all right, we're going to ask a question, all 100 adults, does your metabolism slow? I would be willing to bet that all 100 would go, yeah, and all 100
yes.
are wrong. Scientifically wrong. It does not slow. It's less efficient. And the science is clear. So it's one of those things where we just have so much misinformation that we're making decisions off of stuff that's not real. It's kind of like if I say you and I are going to play chess, but I give you the rule book for checkers. And you stay up all night studying the rule book for checkers, but we're playing chess. Did you really put in the work? Yes. But you got the wrong game plan. And that's what a lot of this is about.
Well, you were talking about genetics, like your niece, who we thought got daddy's genes. So that's what I've been wondering about lately. It's such a coincidence that you brought it up, because let's say I have friends with a family history of bipolar, friends with a family history of Crohn's. Is that genetic? Why did the mother or father get it and then the kids get it? Is it actually indeed genetic, or is it what they're eating? Is it maybe the seed oils? Is it maybe the...
Well, who gives you where did you get your microbiome from?
Maybe when I was in the womb, and then as I was born, maybe also there's something about passing through the birth canal. I don't know.
You get it from your mom. My mom, when she was pregnant with me, ate strawberries nonstop. Do you think I like strawberries?
I think you probably do.
I do. Same as if you listen to Dr. Sabine, when they would do like microbiome transplants, I think she was talking about one of the ladies got a microbiome transplant from her grandson or granddaughter and started craving a lot of the same things that the kid ate once they did that transplant. All that's taking place in the gut. So I'm going to side with Dr. Sabine right now that the emerging science continues to say that it's all in the gut. And whether you get a disease or want to prevent a disease, you must be improving your gut. Otherwise, the efficacy of your efforts are going to be reduced.
And what do we know? What's the emerging science on dementia? Because, the people that I've been following, they talk about, is it called maybe DHT or DEA? I don't know. But increasing fats or increasing certain kind of fats, helping dementia patients. For example, I saw a TED Talk where a woman, her husband, I think, was a professor, and he was high intellect. And the test was you draw a clock. That's one of the signs of dementia. Can they draw a clock properly? Well, the husband couldn't get into the study, so she started increasing. I think it was through coconut oil or a component of coconut oil. I don't know. Was it called DEA or DHEA maybe? And he, after her giving him enough of these fats, he couldn't do the clock as well because he still had dementia, but it reduced his dementia because he could start now drawing a clock. So I wonder what we're eating and what's related to the gut microbiome that can improve our dementia or delay dementia, or maybe like your 114-year-old friend lived to be 114, didn't have any dementia, I think.
Well, the first two things that come to mind when I think of dementia, Alzheimer's, any of the mental challenges that we have is the gut. So imagine everybody's making these comments and these they're sharing all these facts. You look at all these TED Talks and they're making all these claims, but they're not addressing the gut. So if the gut is, if you and I respect Dr. Sabine, if we respect what Hippocrates said 2,000 plus years ago, all disease begins in the gut. If they're right, then how can they have all these TED Talks about all these solutions and not be talking about the gut? So that means it rules them all out. That's where I'm at. I'm current. I believe that there's so much information out there that's wrong because it's not even talking about the gut. There are people, like if I say I only eat meat, like my friend, and he's got C. diff 3 times, that means there's a 4th time coming because he's not getting the nutrients that we know that take place in the gut. And a lot of people, when they get diagnosed with dementia, they're misdiagnosed because they're dehydrated. That's the number one reason for misdiagnosis with dementia is they're dehydrated. And studies say that over 90% of all adults walking around are dehydrated. They're not drinking enough water.
And is it just water or is it fruits and vegetables? What gives us?
Well, I mean, you're going to get water from fruits and vegetables and a lot of foods that you eat, but they're dehydrated. People are not drinking water.
It's interesting you say that because I think it was the beginning of COVID. I don't know if my friend's mother had COVID. Something happened where she was hospitalized, and I forgot about what you just said about dehydration. But when she told me her mom was hospitalized because she wasn't making sense, it seemed like she had dementia. I said, was she dehydrated? So I just learned that. And indeed, she was dehydrated. It's fascinating to think about that you can be misdiagnosed and all you needed was to increase your water. Because it's probably typically in the summer or in hotter climates.
And think about all the people that are trying to figure it out on their own. That is mind-blowing to me. And that's why I believe so much in coaching. That you can't go to your doctor and spend 15, 20, 30 minutes a week talking to your doctor. You see them, what, every 3 months or so, maybe 6 months, sometimes a year, and it's quick. Hey, oh, you look good. Hey, how you? Oh, and it's over. So then you're on your own. So then if you're on your own, you go to work and you see someone that lost weight and they only ate meat, and you go, oh man, I got to do something. So you do what you see. And then you meet someone on a boat like you, and they go, oh, well, I only eat this and remnants. And it's like, and then they look at you and they go, well, you look great. You're 50. Oh, wow. I mean, you know what? How can I do that? And then you get all excited because they're interested in what you're interested in. And you start sharing. And then they get excited. You get excited. They get excited. And everybody's getting excited. And now you just clone someone to go on this path that is going to take them to a place. And they're going to be all alone. Because eventually they're going to have a cookie. Eventually they're going to get off. And eventually you're going to run into them again and go, yeah, I tried, it didn't work. And in your mind, like, no, it didn't work because you didn't, or you needed, I'll help you out this time. And then they may give it a second chance. But again, they never learned. So what's the point if you don't learn?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Right? So I work, it's funny because I have clients right now that I've been coaching for over 20 years. So the question would be, and I've heard people in their family say, why do you still like Coach Robert? I mean, he's already taught you everything. No, because I keep learning. So clients that I worked with in 2005, I told them in 2005, yeah, grapeseed oil is okay. It's not okay today because the science wasn't settled. And I wish I could go back to 2005, 18 years ago, 17 years ago, and tell every person I told that to, nah, don't do grapeseed oil. But if they're reading my old books and they're not up to date with the science, then they're stuck and they don't know why. Because I have people right now, like I had a lady the other day in the Facebook group, and she's really smart. Her name is Megan, so I'm not throwing Megan under the bus. But if you hear this, Megan, I'm glad you're going to hear it. But Megan's like, I know the methodology. She believes in it. But she is in a different place than when she first did it. And I can coach her through it and get her to where she wants to be. But if she don't give me a chance to coach her, she's stuck with the wrong material. We've moved on. And what worked for her at 30 is not going to work for her at 40. And that's why I can't stop. Don't stop. I got to keep it going. I got to keep learning. And I got to keep questioning myself. That's how I came up and got to the place where I understand insulin resistance. Mm-hmm. Is because in 2010, I started meeting people that were following my program around the country, and they weren't getting results. And at first, I thought they were lying.
You mean a couple of them, right? Like there'd be one or two.
It was like quite a few of them.
Oh, I thought a couple. There was always one or two that came up to you after and said, "It's just not working."
Yeah, and I wouldn't believe them at first because I got an abundance of people it's working for. Right? Because I had people eating every 2 to 3 hours, no matter who you were. And now, some of those people have insulin resistance, and eating every 2 to 3 hours makes it worse. How do I reach them? I need to let them know. If you don't have insulin resistance, it can work.
You mentioned you can't sit there for 15 to 20 minutes to learn from your doctor. And when I've spoken to doctors, like, for example, my father had COVID because he's inflamed, prostate cancer, obese, sedentary, AFib, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. And after he was hospitalized, I was speaking to his doctor and then my lung COVID specialist on the East Coast. And I said, who are you seeing come in? Because look at my dad. He was the one at risk and the whole family did fine. And they said, yeah, we're seeing obese with diabetes. We're seeing people generally inflamed. I said, what about my friends with asthma? No, not asthma. It's not a problem. It's COPD on oxygen. My friends with COPD? No, that's fine. It's COPD on oxygen, not doing well with this virus. I said, what about my friends with autoimmune and cancer or previous cancer? They said, nope, they're not having a problem. It's people currently going through cancer. So it seemed like what they were teaching me is inflammation puts you at risk of everything, but especially this virus. But then when I would try to talk to my COVID lung specialist about food, so I thought I was putting 2 and 2 together. He's teaching me it's the inflamed people not doing well. I said, what about food? What about seed oils? What about what they're eating? And he wouldn't consider it. We couldn't have that conversation, but I felt like he was teaching me, typically people not doing well with the virus have inflammation.
Right, because he's looking at the markers of inflammation. He's not looking at the cause, right? So unless you go to the cause and reverse it there, you will chase the effects. You will never win. If you're chasing the effects, which is what most people do, you can't create health. You just keep chasing. You will never catch it. So I always say go to the cause and reverse it there.
Well, that was fascinating that we couldn't have that. I almost felt, how do I explain it? I felt.
But you can't have that conversation.
Yeah, I couldn't.
No, they're not in a place to have that conversation.
I felt silly even bringing it up because I said, well, you're teaching me this. What about that? Shouldn't we consider the foods they're eating? And
no,
that conversation couldn't go
That
anywhere.
would be the cause.
I almost felt uncomfortable, like, I almost felt like, I can't believe I brought it up because you're talking about inflammation, but why can't we talk about like possibly foods being the cause? Because that's how they got to be inflamed.
All right, so Melissa, we have to say goodbye. But in
Thanks,
saying
everyone,
goodbye,
Robert.
Well, I never did a proper introduction.
Oh.
And so I'm going to start it and then you kind of end it.
Okay.
And I would love for you to mention your podcast. I love the fact that you're married, you have a family, you're a mom of 4 kids. You don't have grandkids yet, right?
No.
Okay. You work hard, you love helping people, and what else?
So my kids are ages 15 to 21, and I live in Ventura County, and I've always been interested in health. But when I went to college at UCSB, they only had majors, they didn't have minors. So I was minoring in nutrition, but my major was law because I thought maybe that's more stable than getting into nutrition. So that was always my background, is nutrition. And so what I finally did a few years ago, I was a little intimidated to be on the internet. I know you've been in the public for a long time, but I didn't want to open myself up to the world. And so I just slowly made a show on YouTube called Growth Factor. So if you type in YouTube Growth Factor NDE, or even on the internet, Growth Factor NDE, you'll see my show. And my show started out spiritual because what happened with me was I had anxiety. Most likely it was caused by foods, and I was able to correct myself. But I was looking in the spiritual realm first. So I was looking up spiritual stories. I just want to have this faith and understand that we all have issues. We all have tragedy. We all have things that challenge us, and we have to get through it. And how do we get through it? I thought, well, spirituality. So my show is mostly spiritual stories, people who've had really hard experiences, really wild experiences, and how they got through it. And it's about their belief system. So it started that way. Now I'm moving more into nutrition, and I'm calling it more Meat for Mental Health, because I felt, for me, I was vegan for a year, I was vegetarian most of the time, and then I started increasing the meat, and that's what seemed to help me. So it's also on Rumble.
Okay, and I get you. I can't wait to see how it works out because you're emphasizing meat, but yet you're a diet-free life coach.
Yeah, well, that was before. That's before we got together, though. Okay. So it's a little bit of I got to figure that out.
Yeah. So think that through.
Yeah.
We'll help you out.
Something for mental health.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So hey, you guys were behind the scenes with us. Thank you for who came in here and there.
Come in, they give out all these technical difficulties, and I was walking away, so we were walking away. So
it's hard
to keep the audience.
Well, that's behind the scenes.
That's true.
So
that's all deal with that, I guess, right?
But thank you for spending time.
Thank you, Robert.
Having a good conversation. And as hard as it is to say goodbye, it's time to say goodbye.
It is.
Until the next one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye, you guys. We're out of here.